sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In. I am your host, TJ Washburn. This is episode number 51. With me this week is Eugene Weaver of the Movie Freaks podcast. Eugene, how's it going?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Tired. We were just discussing, but yeah, tired. Dragging ass today. I normally go to bed at 8:30, 9:30 during the week because I get up at 4 in the morning for my job. So I was up until almost 4 o'clock in the morning. So yeah.
Wow. So were you working or were you just up?
I was out with some of my buddies. We were having a monthly nerd night that we usually get together and kind of like old school computer land video game stuff and just hang out.
Cool.
So we all kind of live apart. So it's our and everybody works different. You know how it is, but
yeah,
everybody works different schedules. Harder than hell to get together to do stuff. So once a month we try to plan to get together and just kind of hang out and we do different stuff, whatever. But a lot of times we game or watch some movies or the UFC stuff or whatever we happen to decide to do. So.
Cool. And then sounds fun. Yeah. I the older we get, I've got a wife and 2 kids, and the older I get, it seems like the more everybody's got their own thing going on, and if it's not work, then it's taking care of kids. So the podcasting is kind of my release as far as, hanging out with friends sometimes, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah, same here. I come from a music background, I was in bands and stuff, and that kind of used to be my outside of my regular friends that I hang out with, but that used to be my going out and doing stuff, and I haven't done that for a while. So the podcasting thing is still my kind of the same idea for me too. It's my way of during the week to see some of my friends and shoot the shit and hang out.
Yeah, it works. I like it. I like it, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's forever, but it kind of is forever. It's you put it up there on the cloud, and now other people can listen to it, and I like to actually for our show, I like to go back. Just picking random, really old episodes and just hitting play on them and I remember when we recorded that and I was, going through something or I was, this was a good time in my life or whatever. And it's a cool way to keep tabs on, what you've been doing in your past with your friends and all that good stuff. So I quite enjoyed it. In fact, I used to have my own podcast it was just me, myself, and I. And it got to be too much because of my other obligations with Movie Freaks and then my job. And so, plus after a while, I'm like, okay, it's getting to be kind of difficult to just talk by yourself for 30 minutes to 45 minutes. But, I love podcasts.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I do these type of ones where I have guests on, and then I do my review ones, but my review ones are pretty straightforward. And I enjoy both of them for different reasons. I enjoy the review ones because it's I'm watching all these movies anyway. I might as well do reviews and throw one up, but with these ones, I try to keep a pretty consistent, regular show time and put them out on the same day and stuff. The review ones, it's when I have 8, 9, 10 movies to review, then I'll do one. Which is usually most weeks because I'm like a lot of people these days. I'm a cord cutter, so I don't really watch TV. If I'm going to watch something, it's going to be a movie. And I don't want to, throw my vast movie collection to waste, So it's getting bigger and bigger all the time. So.
Me too. I'm a collector. Anybody that listens to our show knows that I collect movies. So does Eric. We've been collecting movies since the VHS days, and obviously you are too. You are a big VHS collector.
I started about the same time. Eric is actually the one that got me into that that documentary, Just Your Tracking. And as soon as I watched that, the nostalgia wave hit me full on, and I'm like, man, I miss the days of roaming the video store aisles and just walking by and looking at all these different films and oh man, I should check that out, right? That looks awesome. And you know as damn well as I do, especially 80s artwork from 80s horror or 80s.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
It's so good, but like 90% of the time, the artwork had nothing to do with the film whatsoever.
Yep.
So you'd get this
back in those days. Yeah, back in those days, it was great artwork, and then you'd watch the movie, and not typically, but there's a fair amount of time where you'd stick it in, hit play, and it's like, oh, this is not going to be a good movie. But hey, I just chucked out $4 to rent this thing, so now I have to watch it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And so do you remember what the first VHS was that you ever rented?
That I ever rented?
Yeah.
Oof. No. Yes and no. I didn't actually physically rent it, but before most anybody I knew even owned a VCR, when you could rent them from some of these little mom and pops, especially in Maine. I don't know how it was out here, out where you're from, but here, back in the early 80s, maybe 82, 83 is when we started kind of seeing some rental places pop up that I can remember anyway, because I would have been 4 or 5 years old at that time, and my dad rented a VCR because he worked in a mill town, and they had a little video store and whatever. So we rented a VCR for the weekend, and he rented Poltergeist and Flash.
Oh, nice!
And Flash Gordon. I was, like I said, 4 or 5. I wasn't supposed to watch Poltergeist, but he rented Flash Gordon for me, and that was the first thing I ever remember seeing. And I thought that was the coolest thing. I have this tape, and we can put it in and watch it. And I probably watched it 5 times. But the funny part is my sister, who's 8 years older than me, was watching Poltergeist, and we had a little family room that was separate from the living room where my parents had their TV. My sister and I had this little crappy old TV with tinfoil rabbit ears and barely worked, and I had my Atari hooked up on it, and she was watching Poltergeist, and she kept telling me not to come in. And to this day, I still remember walking in, and it's the bedroom scene with the clown.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I walked in on, and it terrified the hell out of me. So, yeah, that was the first time I remember a VCR, being in the house and rental stuff. And then it was a year, my dad ended up buying one, but then there was I still don't remember there being any rental places where I live for another year or two. Once in a while, he would rent some because he worked an hour away. So he would bring stuff, home randomly, but it was a lot of taping things. We had the one tape because, VHS tapes were $30 for a blank tape, and
you'd record over it and over it and over it.
Yeah. We'd randomly record some stuff we wanted to watch off HBO or basic cable or whatever,
Yep. Been there, done that. That was pretty much me as well. I had a couple VHS tapes, and I would tape a movie, and then I would watch it over and over and over, and then I'd, just rinse, repeat. And every now and then there would be one that would be really good that I would, I would conserve. And okay, this tape here is the one that I will never record over. And then there was the little recorder, if you tear the little plastic tab out,
yeah.
You can't record over it anymore.
Unless you put a piece of tape. Unless you put a piece of tape over it.
Unless you put a piece of tape over it. That's right. And so there was a couple movies that I taped off a TV that I broke the little piece of plastic off of just so that I would never record over it. And that was Empire Strikes Back, John Carpenter's The Thing, and Halloween. Or not Halloween, I'm sorry. John Carpenter's The Thing and John Carpenter... Well, not John Carpenter. Halloween Part 2.
Okay.
And, of course, The Thing and Halloween 2 were both heavily edited, but that's the only version that I even knew. And they were so edited that it was almost like they were different movies, especially The Thing. And
I'm sure.
Yeah, that was what I watched for years. I wore that tape out. But then I would have my other tapes that they were the lesser movies that I would just record over and over and over and over again.
And I remember, eventually my dad bought a second tape, or a couple extra tapes, like for Christmas one year. My sister and I each got our own blank tape. So then we each had a tape to tape stuff on, And that way we could put the movies and keep them. And I kind of did the same thing as you. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to get rid of, Crawl and put this on or whatever. And then, but I'm not getting rid of Red Dawn and Lone Wolf McQuade because I'm going to watch those over and over,
Yeah.
So, and I actually still had that tape when I was in high school. I had Red Dawn, Lone Wolf McQuade, and I can't remember what the hell the other tape was now. It's my buddy and I were just talking about it on the Canon episode I did of the show a few days ago, my buddy Pete. And I actually still had that on tape in high school, and it finally wore out. It was getting so bad, because I'd watched it so many times, and that tape had probably been recorded over, God knows how many times that tape had been taped over. But I still had it in high school, and it finally just died. It snapped. It did something. I can't remember, but I ended up having to throw it out, and I was so upset because at the time, this is early 90s, you couldn't, even in the early 90s, it was harder than hell to find movies to buy. You could get them, but they were still pretty expensive for VHS. And a lot of movies hadn't been released for sale. So I still remember them being ungodly difficult. 90% of the movies I ever bought in high school were stuff from the video, the video hair store secondhand stuff.
Yeah. Oh, me too. That's any way I could get the VHSs. I mean, and it got to the point where I can't believe I'm admitting this, but I would, take my VCR over to my friend's house. We'd hook them up, and we would hope that there wasn't the Macrovision or whatever copy protection thing, and we'd put the 2 VHS tapes in, and let's hope we can do this. So I remember Phantasm 2 and Serpent and the Rainbow. Those were 2 movies that we did that, and it taped, but it was like a scrambled satellite signal mess. Watching it was you could, because there was copy protection on it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So the entire way through, it was wobbly, and it was obvious that there was some sort of copy protection. But I watched those over and over and over. I'm I still have Serpent and the Rainbow, and I still have Phantasm Part 2, even though I can barely see what's on the screen. I still have them on VHS. Now, of course, I've got the Blu-rays of them. But back then, it was however we can get our hands on these movies, and then, like you said, that was back in the days where they were really, really, really expensive. And I'm a teenager. I don't have $80 to drop on Phantasm Part 2. So, and we lived in a podunk Amish countries where it was hard to even rent these. So we had to go far to rent them. Yeah. So we're gonna make this worth our while. And it worked, sort of. And then when VHS became more of a sell-through, and you could get them for somewhat reasonable pricing, then
that was what? That was if I remember right, that was maybe mid 90s when you finally really started to be able to, some of the companies started putting out their greatest hits collections, like MGM and some of them. So I think that was mid-90s when I remember actually going to some stores and actually being able to find tapes for $10, $15. Sometimes, if there was a sale, you could get one for $6 or $7, but most of the time they were still, for a movie that was 40 years old, you were still paying $20, $25 for.
Yeah, boy, and I remember when Video Treasures came out, they were they were kind of this smaller company that would there was a bunch of them that would put out mostly horror movies, and they had Sleepaway Camp and Christmas Evil, and a couple other ones, that I bought, but that studio in particular, that company, all of their movies were in EP mode. So it was they didn't have to use that much tape, and the quality was just awful. But it was hey, it's cheap. You can buy this for really, really cheap. And it's funny because now, obviously, most of all of those companies are gone, but now even on Blu-ray, what's interesting is back then in the VHS days is all of those small companies generally put out pretty crappy quality, either EP or whatever, and just cheap. It was very, very, very cheap. Yeah. And now we have the companies that are putting out those same movies, but they're like super expensive Blu-rays, and they are like deluxe, primo remasters, and for the most part, I think worth what you're paying for them. Some of these companies are like go all out, and it's just funny how some of those old movies that got just dumped onto VHS, just crap.
Night of the Living Dead is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
Because how many companies, where Night of the Living Dead was in the public domain, how many companies put out just like a shitty... The DVD that I had, I think it was from like Madden-C or something, because, you know, Madden-C put out a lot of those public domain films. And
yeah.
The the DVD copy I have of the original DVD copy I had, Night of the Living Dead, might as well have been a really bad VHS transfer because it is so grainy and like blurry.
Yeah. I may have had that. Yeah,
I bought it, but I bought it back. You know, even when DVDs were still kind of expensive, but they were reasonable. I remember buying that, I think, for like $6, because I was like, holy shit, cool, I can get a copy of Night of the Living Dead, awesome, you know, for $6. And I've watched that dozens of times. So when I bought the Criterion Blu-ray of Night of the Living Dead and watched it, I was like, holy shit. I was like, it was almost like watching the film for the first time again, which is an amazing thing. If you're as, you know, and I'm sure you're probably as big of a fan of Night of the Living Dead as I am.
I adore that movie.
So, getting to see it like that for the first time, it's almost like seeing the film for the first time again. And I think you mentioned it on the Movie Freaks. I heard stuff in that film I have never heard before. There was like noises and sounds and like... I don't think one scene that really stuck out to me was... when she's picking up the telephone and she's holding it, and you can actually hear the telephone being off the hook and like the noises on it.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think I've ever heard that on the version that I have, and that's pretty much the version I've watched so much over the years, and just other little things. But the film looks
it takes I know, and it takes a movie that you like. Growing up, for me, Night of the Living Dead was, it's that little scrappy, super low budget movie that just, it looks bad because it has no money thrown at it, and it's just, it's one of those lightning in the bottle movies, and that's just the way it looks. That's the way it was filmed. Well, actually, no. The way it was filmed, I'm guessing, is what the Criterion Blu-ray is, you know, looking through the camera lens, I'm guessing that's what George Romero, was seeing, and we finally are able to see what he saw back then as he was making it, and now it makes the movie look so much more expensive. And it makes, I don't know, like some movies I guess might benefit from that more ragged, dirty look, but that movie there, it actually, to me, it enhances the movie. It makes it even more scary how good it looks, and how it's like it seems even more competently made watching that Criterion Blu-ray. But that is a prized possession in my collection there. I know Criterion and I know what to expect from them, but that transfer was beyond what I was even expecting, because I'm so used to the older versions of Night of the Living Dead.
And most of them are pretty shitty. I don't think, because this was one of the things, and like as a big fan of that movie, I'm one of those weird people, like I saw Night of the Living Dead 90 before I ever saw the original one, because, you know, I think, I can't remember if I discussed this with you, maybe even during the Christmas time thing, but, or online or something, but I saw Night of the Living Dead 90 before the original Night of the Living Dead, because I got into horror, it was like sixth grade, I think. I was about 12 when I really got into horror, and part of the reason of that was Night of the Living Dead 90. I saw
such a great movie.
I saw that movie, and I was like, this is back in the day. Now think of this. I was like 11, 12. I was home for the weekend by myself because my parents were gone on a trip, because, you know, that's back in the day. I was 12. I was plenty old enough. And,
Yeah.
We lived out in the middle of nowhere. I had no neighbors, I was out in the middle of the woods, which made it even more creepy as an 11 or 12-year-old watching Night of the Living Dead 90 and then looking out and there was a field in my backyard and looking at that field and it's just getting to be dusk and you start thinking, oh God, So,
Yep. One shadowy figure looming in the distance, then another, all slowly heading your way.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. So yeah, I remember just and it freaking me out, but I loved it, and that was the same time I really got into the Misfits and Stephen King. So that was all that stuff was at the same time. And I just turned me into a huge horror movie nut. So
yeah,
yeah,
and it's funny because Night of the Living Dead, Tom Savini 1990 version. That's one of the movies that got me into revisiting more classic movies because I was not expecting much when I watched that back when it came out on VHS, and it was so good, and it still holds up. To this day. In fact, I think I've watched that more times than I've watched the original Night of the Living Dead. And I've watched the Night of the Living Dead plenty of times, the original Romero version.
Same here.
But that Tom Savini version, it's so good. It's so well made. And Savini makes it his own while still being well, I'm not sure what the word is, but being what's the word I'm looking for? Just paying homage to Romero from the original. There's enough stuff from the original in there, but he makes it his own. The music is really good. The effects are really good. The acting, everything about the remake.
Did we get Bill Moseley as Johnny?
yeah, and that's one of the best, if not the best. Well, no, I don't want to say that because The Thing. I guess The Thing is technically a remake of
Thing from Another World.
Yeah, so it's but Savini's 1990 version is one of my all-time favorite remakes.
Oh yeah,
and it holds up.
And
now, Thomas? Did you ever watch the Twilight Time Blu-ray that came out?
I haven't because I was just going to ask you this because I figured you would know more so than most anybody else I'm friends with. I have been holding off on purchasing a copy of Night of the Living Dead 90 on Blu-ray until I wanted to make sure there was Arrow and all these other awesome companies and Scream Factory are putting out these amazing Blu-rays of these films loaded. I've kind of been waiting for something like that. And every time I've looked, I've never really found much in the way of Blu-rays. The one I did find, I think, is out of print and it is ungodly expensive. So,
well, so to clue you in on that, so that's Twilight Time's version, and that was a botched transfer. Someone cranked up the blue tint on that movie, and the entire movie is awash in blue, which that's not the way the movie looks. Right. The movie looks normal, but that movie, I'm it was ruined. I bought it on Blu-ray when it came out, excited, and then I watched it, and I'm like, well, this is ruined. This is not the movie. This is so bad. And so I sold it immediately. And yeah, it's worth a lot. I mean, it's out of print. However, Umbrella, which is a Blu-ray company from Australia, they released it properly with tons of special features, region-free, and it is pretty readily available here in the States. I got it from, I believe, Deep Discount DVD.
Oh, cool.
For maybe $18-20, but that's the version to have. Great special features, great transfer. I mean, I suppose Scream Factory or Arrow could maybe clean it up even more, but it looks great. But the Twilight Time
so Umbrella
is
the
completely
company that put that one.
Umbrella.
I will have to see. I used to live on deep discount DVD back in the day when I first got my DVD player, because we had a couple stores that actually the Best Buy that's in Bangor, which is 45 minutes south of me, actually used to have a phenomenal horror section, and I used to get a lot of horror movies there, but there was a lot that I couldn't find, and I remember there's a horror movie group I've been a part of now for almost going on, I think, 15, 16 years now, called the Axis of Very Evil, which you are a member of now.
Yep.
But I remember somebody in that group back in the day when we lived on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh yeah.
somebody suggested, they were like, oh yeah, you need to, because I'm like, I can't find these movies. I don't, this was before everybody used to shop a lot online, that I remember. And everybody's like, no, you don't want to shop online. People will steal your identity, and which, does happen. But back then, people were really, really paranoid about the online shopping thing. And it probably wasn't anywhere near as secure as it is now. But I remember finding deep discount DVDs, so like anytime anybody, that and eBay were like the two places I would get stuff that I couldn't readily find. And I remember somebody saying, oh yeah, you need to check this place called Deep Discount DVD out, because they're always running sales where it's like you can buy 3 movies for $20 or $25. And
yep.
So yeah, I bought a lot of stuff off that. So that's just funny that you mentioned I didn't even know they were still around. So.
Oh yeah, they are. Yep, Deep Discount. Every now and then I would buy from them. Amazon has kind of cornered the market on online Blu-ray shopping. I mean, for some of the more hard to find stuff, you're going to have to go to I'm not sure if you ever shop on RoninFlix.com.
No.
They're quite expensive, but that is Scorpion and Code Red's own online store, basically. And Bill from Code Red, he has his own big cartel store where he sells his own stuff, but then his brother Walt, he has his own store as well called RoninFlix, Flix. And so if you're into Code Red and Scorpion stuff, that's where you get them. And so if you really look, you can find different online stores to get these movies that are not necessarily on Amazon, because some of the stuff that I collect, like Code Red and Scorpion titles, you have to do a little bit more digging to actually find them online to purchase. There's various avenues, but RoninFlix is a great site to visit. However, I mean, when you get into stuff like Scorpion and Code Red, and even Arrow and Scream Factory, you're looking at a good $20, sometimes close to $30 a release.
Yeah.
And I kind of understand why. These guys are small companies with little overhead. Basically, it's one or two guys that are purchasing the rights to these movies, remastering them, and then replicating them, putting them out on Blu-ray, like pressing the discs. So I understand they're not a Sony, they're not a Paramount. I get why these movies are expensive. I get why they only do runs of maybe 1,000 and then it's out of print. Yeah. And that's some of the allure to me, is collecting stuff like that is that has taken a lot of time and care into remastering these movies that are very obscure and become quite collectible. And if they go out of print.
But this is one thing, and I don't buy a lot of those because I personally don't have the disposable income to spend on that stuff. I pretty much have like an entertainment budget that I
Sure.
try to stick to. I try to stick to it because it's being a movie lover, it's way too hard just to walk into a store and be like, I want this row of film. So I have to kind of pick and choose, and I'll admit I'm pretty cheap. So anyway, so luckily I have a really awesome store up where I live called Bull Moose, and
Oh yeah, Bull Moose is great.
And I can find
I online shop there. Yeah,
and I can find stuff used pretty cheap there a lot of times, and they're doing sales, and you get points like frequent buyer points, and and a lot of times, like when newer stuff comes out, they sell it, I'm guessing, for pretty much about what they're paying for it for stock. Like you have like a 4 or 5 day window if you can go in, if there's something newer coming out. Like the Scream Factory releases of Prince of Darkness and Assault on Precinct 13, the Steelbook editions, are like $18 a piece right now if you pre-order through Bull Moose, which is cheaper than most anywhere else you're going to find. So that's how, like I usually will pick stuff like up, as far as like more expensive stuff. But for me, it's as much as I would like to buy every Arrow release, because I know Arrow is going to put out a phenomenal product. This is the thing about, like you were saying about those companies, they put so much love into restoring and special features. It's like they're treating that movie like it's a 6-time Academy Award winning, film, and this is for the stuff or whatever happens to be, that they're putting out. And I appreciate that, and I love supporting companies like that because it's a lot of films that I love that are never going to get that sort of attention anywhere else. So
I agree.
So
yeah, I totally agree.
My big thing to stay kind of, stay within my budget of what I can spend on films that I've decided I definitely am collecting is I'm going to purchase all the Scream Factory steel books of John Carpenter's, and I plan on repurchasing all of Carpenter's movies in Blu-ray format because John Carpenter is my favorite director, hands down, even though he may not be the most consistent director, because let's face it, he had some duds in there, but
Yeah. But boy, when he was on fire, man, he was like, there was a string of movies where everyone was just badass.
I mean, from I would say, Halloween up to...
I would go back to even Assault on Precinct 13. That's kind of where it started for me.
But I never think of that one as like before Halloween because I never saw that movie until early 2000s before I ever even saw Assault on Precinct 13. But I mean, if you look, I would say I'm a big fan of the movie Vampires, which is not everybody's most favorite film. There's a lot of people.
It's okay, James Woods. That's still good Carpenter in my opinion.
I enjoyed the hell out of it, but I mean, I think if you really want to go to like heyday Carpenter, around the time They Live come out, I think maybe was where he really peaked because They Live. I rewatched that because I bought the Steelbook. Holy crap, that movie looks amazing on that transfer, but it's still such a good friggin' movie. And the stupid and weird part is that movie's more poignant today than it probably was when it came out in 1987. So
isn't that crazy? Yeah, I agree. I think that he peaked. Well, I think that he was waning a bit. His popularity may have been waning just a bit with In the Mouth of Madness, which is a fantastic movie. But I know I saw that in the theater, but it didn't do good.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like at that point, maybe his budget, I don't want to say his budgets got smaller, but it just, at that point, things kind of went downhill a little bit. Village of the Damned, it was good. That was
like Village of the
first
Damned.
time that I really, yeah, I did too. But I'm like, that's the first time I'm like, okay, that was a step down from the previous Carpenter movies, but still good. And then Ghosts of Mars and Escape from L.A. But even those, I still find some enjoyment out of those.
Those are Monster Vision, Joe Bob Briggs hosting, cheesy enjoyment type films. They're not good, but they're watchable and they're cheesy fun,
Yeah.
So now, real quick before I forget, did you ever were you a big Monster Vision fan back in the day, or were you really allowed to watch Monster Vision?
Oh no! Everything from back in the day, I would have to sneak. I come from a very conservative background, and so I pretty much everything was sneaking as far as my concerts and my tattoos, and especially my movies. Movies were a big hidden secret. Like, where can I hide this newest VHS that I either recorded off a TV or that I somehow was able to purchase from the local Kmart and stick in my coat pocket and just hope that my mom and dad don't notice like this big puff in my coat pocket. Like, why is your coat pocket bigger? Oh, it's because I just bought Eddie Murphy Raw on VHS.
Some kids hid their their porn VHSs in the top of their closet. Eugene had Evil Dead and
yes,
and Ice Cream Man,
Return of the Living Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. I mean, you name it, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the it was whatever horror movies I could get my hands on, and then what I would actually do is I would move the location of my hidden VHS just to keep things.
I'm gonna keep them guessing.
I didn't get, so I didn't get complacent. Like, oh, it's fine hidden here. So the best spot was actually I had this old desk, and if you pull out the bottom drawer, it's not supposed to come out. But if you wiggle it really good, it was an old drawer or an old desk. You could finally force that bottom drawer out, and it wasn't supposed to come out. And so, but there was like about enough. It was enough space in there that I could literally put my VHS tapes in and stack them in there and then put that drawer back in. And if they were to ever go through my drawers, which I know they did, they would open that up and it wouldn't pop out, and it would be like, oh, it's just more Mad magazines or more, whatever, nonsense that I was collecting, and Nintendo magazine. But underneath that desk, that drawer, was a treasure trove of 80s awesome horror. And yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw 2, Toxic Avenger, you name it. If I could get my hands on it, man, if I would have the cash, every dollar that I would have would pretty much go to horror movies. Or that time, if it would be like something like Crocodile Dundee or Top Gun or even like First Blood, I think I could get away with that one. That stuff I could have out. So it was almost like I tried to have those neatly displayed. So it's like, here is my VHS collection. Only these, nothing else. And also that's where I put my Guns N' Roses cassettes and Motley Crue and Poison and all. That's, yeah.
You know what?
That's my...
You know what's funny, because I come from that same era. My parents were pretty lax on like what they let me watch, as far as if it was really violent or gory, that was absolutely perfectly fine. But if it had nudity in it, that's kind of where I was, like, okay, no, you can't watch Meatballs Part 4 because there's lots of boobies in that, but go ahead and watch Red Dawn again. So I remember being like 7 or 8 and watching Monster Vision, because and it was weird because I saw movies like Chud and Chud 2 and Return of the Living Dead and Ghoulies and Munchies and a lot of these movies like that on Monster Vision, but I never really looked at them as like horror movies because I remember them being pretty heavily edited. So there really wasn't a lot that was real scary in those films from what I remember. It wasn't until like years later when I actually got to see like the uncut versions of them and shit. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. That's why.
Yes. Yes. That actually happened to me with Conan the Barbarian. That's another one that I watched on TV. And that was actually one that I was able to watch with, like, not with my parents. They hated all of that stuff, but it was still okay enough that I could watch that. They would know I'm watching it. I wore that VHS, like, television version out. I watched that over and over and over. And that's Conan. That's Conan the Barbarian. That's what I remember, which was a fun, not family friendly, but it was a fun, harmless action film. And then I remember one night I was on vacation. Actually, I think that Eric's parents were on vacation with us, or they met us or something, but I was on vacation. We were staying at some beach house, and we had HBO there, and I saw that at like midnight, Conan the Barbarian was going to be on. And I was old enough to, at that point, know that whatever version is going to be different than the one that I've grown up with. So that night, I remember I snuck out. I watched the entire 2 hours and 10 minutes of Conan the Barbarian unedited on mute. Like, it had to be muted. So I didn't hear a word they were saying, but I just watched the glorious images unfold on screen. The copious amounts of nudity and gore and bloodshed and just awesome 80s Schwarzenegger action. And so I'm like, oh, that's what this movie is actually about, or it is supposed to be. And my head's lobbed off, and it was great. And that's not one of my all-time favorite movies, but it's just interesting. That's like, much like The Thing, I grew up viewing that movie in a completely different way. It's like, well, that's The Thing, that's a cool science fiction creature feature that's, kind of harmless, because that's even another one. I believe that I watched that one even in front of my parents, the television version, but it was so edited that it wasn't the big deal. So anyway, sorry about that. Hold on one second.
That's all right.
I'm getting a call from my sister. Anyway, so that was my little,
I'm totally there with you, because the first time that I saw like the regular non-edited for TV version of Return of the Living Dead, I was just like, holy crap. Because, the whole Linnea Quigley dancing scene, I just was like, I was like, holy crap, this movie is way different than the one that I saw. And 2, I'm in love with her because she's, I think I always blame Linnea Quigley for my lifelong obsession with like goth punk girls. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. First time I ever saw her in a movie was, of course, Silent Night, Deadly Night, the deer antler scene. But then Return of the Living Dead was very shortly thereafter. And so it's like those 2 movies, and then even maybe like Night of the Demons, I guess, would be in there too. Have you seen Night of the Demons?
I have not. It's like one of those I know I need to watch type films because I've heard people talk about it for so long, but I just never get around. I've never gotten around to watching it.
Quigley and the lipstick scene. That's all you need to know about Night of the Demons is her and a lipstick container.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, I'll tell you what, Return of the Living Dead, for I'm not sure how many years, whenever I would watch that on VHS, that's another one that I purchased and had to keep that hidden. But I was always like, how were they able to get away with an R rating with her butt naked in this thing? And then later, like, as the versions got more and more cleaned up, you realize, well, she's supposed to be naked, but she's not. And,
she's wearing
but
a
back then it was
like, she's wearing a crotch prosthetic, basically.
Yeah. But back then on VHS, I'm like, how? I can't believe I'm watching this. This is the closest thing to porn, and so, oh yeah. But now where does Return of the Living Dead fall for you as far as like that's one of my favorite movies. I love Return of the Living Dead. Is that one that you hold in high regard?
I can't remember exactly where I had it on my top 100. I did a top 100 horror this year, and I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's in my top 15 all-time favorite horror films.
Wow, so nice.
I absolutely adore that movie. Another one that I adore, real quick while we're still on, like I said, this is going to go by so fast, but
I know.
I believe that Arrow is putting out a Blu-ray version of The Church, which is Michelle Sophie, the guy that did Cemetery Man. I'm pretty sure it's Arrow.
I thought that was Scream Factory, or not Scream. I think that's Scorpion.
But I happened to see it on the upcoming Blu-ray releases on the Bull Moose website, and I'm like, oh, buddy, because I adore that. I love that movie. That movie's, and I haven't had a copy for years. I so famously, as I've stated many times on this show, got into a situation many years ago where oil prices got really expensive and I needed heat for the winter and I didn't have a lot of money, so I had to sell most of my movie collection at the time, and that included all my Italian films. And so I no longer have any of my Fulci, Argento, Sovi, Bava. I have none of that stuff anymore. And unfortunately, that stuff is either stupidly expensive to find, to get the actual unedited versions of it that aren't chopped all to hell, or so I had all those versions because I imported them. I got them on eBay, places like that, and I paid some bucks for some of those. So so I'm pretty excited. If Cemetery Man would get a re-release so I could actually get a copy of that on Blu-ray, would be phenomenal, because I no longer have a copy of that. And I definitely want to pick up The Church, because The Church is just bonkers, and
it's fantastic. I actually I imported The Church and The Sect from a UK label called Shameless on Blu-ray, and but having said that, I have a region-free player, but Scorpion is releasing those on Blu-ray, so that's probably the version to get. I'm not sure if the transfers are going to be different, but the transfers that I have from the UK are fantastic. And The Church is such a great bonkers movie. It's almost like not all of it quite makes sense in a nightmare logic sort of way, which makes it all the better. And that ending with the people coming up out of the spoiler, I guess, coming up out of the church, and they're all like this big pile on this like muddy pile, and it's so bizarre and weird and like, what? It's great. Great movie. The Sect isn't quite... Have you seen The Sect?
I have not.
Because that's another one from him. It's not quite as good, but and it makes even less sense, but the ending makes it all worthwhile. I still think that his best movie is Stage Fright, though. I adore Stage Fright, but I'm a slasher guy.
I didn't care for Stage Fright. That was like...
Really?
No, I couldn't get into it. I bought it, obviously, because that was back in the day when I literally, any of that stuff I could get a hold of, I bought it, sight unseen.
So you had the old Anchor Bay, and that was Anchor Bay.
Yeah, exactly. and I remember I watched it once all the way through, and I was like, I didn't hate it, but I was like, this just isn't for me. And then like a month there, I was like, but I spent like $15 on it, so I was like, I'll give this another watch.
Committed.
And
You're committed.
I made it like halfway through the second time, and I just couldn't get into it. But now the Church and Cemetery, man, I could just throw on and be like, yeah, bonkers weirdness that just is. And you can tell he was an Argento protege because he very similar style.
Yeah, I liked every now and then you'll pop in an Argento movie or a Fulci movie, and you're like, oh, it's Sylvie's in this. He's starring in this movie.
And he was in a lot of those movies too, and I didn't.
Yeah, I think that's so cool.
Curly blonde-haired guy for anybody who's not. Yeah.
He was in a Lamberto Bava movie as well that I watched not that long ago, and I'm like, I forgot that he was a star. He was more of an actor than he was a director. He's still around, but I think that it's more like he just does TV shows in Italy.
Yeah, I don't even know where the hell we were with that, but
yeah, I'm not even sure. We were talking about stage fright and how he was kind of hanging things up after Cemetery Man, and then he was an actor more than a director. But yeah.
Seeing we're already like 45 minutes through, I haven't even started talking about anything, but I knew this was going to happen. Yeah. I knew you and I would.
Yeah, just BSing about movies.
I knew this would happen the same thing happened when I had Eric on and him and I were talking, and we were just like, well, okay, hour 15's up. I was like, we didn't even really start talking about anything, so the joy. Anyway, so but I want to ask you a little bit because for the listeners out there who haven't listened to the Movie Freaks podcast yet, and if you haven't, I don't know what's wrong with you if you like movies and you haven't listened to it yet, because I honestly, not just because Eugene's on, but it's like hands down one of my favorite podcasts. Like I anxiously await for it to come out every week. So you guys always make me laugh. I actually listened to the Oscar episode last night. This morning and yesterday, going back down to my buddies because it's a bit of a commute down there, and I was dying laughing. When that section, that end part with you and Eric, because you guys couldn't stop laughing, I started laughing,
and we couldn't. We got to that point where it was like it's over. Like I could tell we can't recover from this. We're done.
So anyway, for those of you. Go and find the Movie Freaks on any app that you listen to. Any of the apps you're listening to Average Joe's Drive-In on, you can find the Movie Freaks, add it. You can thank me later in the forms of donations. So those of you who haven't, Eugene runs a movie theater, which I think is pretty badass. So tell everybody a little bit, because I didn't realize the whole buying and purchasing thing and all that bullshit. So everybody, explain to people kind of what it is exactly that you do and kind of like what your theater is.
Well, it's a one-screen art house theater, and we don't have many seats, but that's part of its charm, is that it's a kind of almost exclusive. And so a lot of the movies we get, you're not going to see at the local Cineplex around us. So you're going to have to drive pretty far to see that movie somewhere else. And so I guess sometimes it pays off really well, and people are like, wow, I can't believe that the Nightlight is getting this movie because I can't see it anywhere else. Whereas other times it's like the movie might be really good, but it's such a rare type of thing, or so few people have heard about it, that we don't get as many people to come out for the movie, even though it might be a great movie. It's just kind of, it's hard to always find that movie that is, that people want to go see that may not come to the local Cinemark or AMC or, Regal, that, they're going to have to drive long and far to find that movie anywhere else. So we try to find unique movies from around the world, especially movies that get like Oscar buzz or awards type buzz. Especially if it's from, I don't want to say especially, but like we're getting the winner of the best foreign film of the year at the Oscars. We're getting that movie coming out next Friday. We get some short films in, animated stuff from across the world, documentaries from across the world. Just unique type of content. And obviously this is a smaller scale than what I'm sure companies like Cinemark and AMC deal with, but it is still a process to deal with distributors, and it's wheeling and dealing. You know, you have to come up with a set amount of weeks that the movie's going to play and terms. And because we're one screen, sometimes I have to negotiate well, we want to get your movie, but we also have another movie that we want to get. Can we play your movie at the same time? Like, your movie will get 7 o'clock and the other movie will get 9 o'clock. And 50-50, the distributor will be like, no, we don't like that. We want it just to be our movie. And that is more of a gamble for us, because if the movie does not do well, we're stuck with it for a week, maybe two. Whereas if it's two movies, maybe one does really well and the other one doesn't. And that's just part of only having one screen. Having two screens opens up a plethora of more possibilities, but we don't have that. We actually have a lounge there. We're a full bar.
I was going to say, I saw a picture. So you guys have a bar, so yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, it's a full bar, and we have a lounge that has a projector and a screen, and sound system, Blu-ray player, and it's just a really, really nice home theater setup. That's great. We still have to get licensing permission from distributors and pay them, royalties or whatever, but it's different from a theater projector. So a home projector, you can get, I can license anything on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever. That's fine. But in order to get theatrical movies, those only play on the big projectors. And by big projectors, I mean projectors that people don't have in their house. These are projectors that are found in movie theaters.
And so ungodly
it makes it a little bit... Oh yeah, we're talking a good $50,000 up to well over $100,000 for one of these projectors, but they're specifically made to play content from distributors, and so it's just, I can get stuff for that lounge, and I have already. But for the most part, we are still a one-screen theater, and it just makes it kind of tricky. But it's still, that's my favorite part of the job is picking out movies and finding it's almost like a puzzle. Like you're piecing this puzzle together constantly of what movie fits into what week, and hopefully it does good enough to warrant a second week. And then if that's the case, then there's a movie that has to go in that second week, and it's just a constant revolving puzzle. And in the meantime, there's lots of private rental requests, and there's people that want to bring in repertory screenings. And so it's just a constant ebb and flow of movies on 1.5 screens.
That's, but I think that's kind of cool because, I would think you have to have somewhat of a pretty good understanding and knowledge of movies and what is and isn't going to work in order to do what you're doing for a job, basically.
Yeah, I try. And honestly, there's, I'd say at least half of the time, the movies that I pick, I personally don't have tons of interest in, but I feel like it's a good movie to bring into the community, and it's a movie that will draw a lot of interest, and our guests will appreciate and like that movie. I mean, I'm a horror guy, but by no means do I like, I'm going to get all sorts of horror movies for this place. No, it's like, it's a few might work, but even then, I want to make sure that it's ones that fit the style of our theater and what people are expecting. So we're not getting all out gore fest unless it's maybe like a late night one-off screening or something like that. But so for every witch that does work really, really well there is a plethora of other horror movies that probably would not do well there and just are not a good fit. Now, you
guys had the Suspiria reprint, didn't you?
We did, yes, for 3 nights. And that did very, very well.
I bet that was amazing to see that on a big screen.
Yes. And now even at that point, I have to be careful with how many of those repertory screenings we do, because if they coincide with a first-run movie, that will upset our distributors because, they're agreeing for us to play their movie. Well, that means 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So why are you playing why are you playing that movie at our prime time? So I'm always trying to find creative ways of bringing in repertory screening. If we do repertory screenings, that they don't interrupt our daily programming from our main distributors. Like in May, we're actually going to do 4 Shaw Brothers movies. So every Friday in May, it's going to be another Shaw Brothers movie. So 36th Chamber of Shaolin, 5 Deadly Venoms, Boxer's Omen, and Come Drink With Me. So we got 4 movies in May, but even then, it's a Friday night, prime time, but I have to make sure that those movies play at 10 o'clock or later so that I can try to squeeze 2 showings in of content from our distributors, whatever movie I'm going to be booking then that is like a first-run movie. So it's always a challenge.
Yeah, it sounds it, but that's kind of cool that you've kind of been able to take your love of movies and film and kind of turn it into a job. So not everybody gets lucky enough to do that, you know. I'm sure it's like anything, it's work, you know, but still, at least. Oh,
it is work. It is stressful, and honestly, a lot of these movies I don't even watch. Like those later night movies, I got a wife and kids, and I'm working quite a bit during the day, and especially in the mornings. And so it's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, I probably won't be there. I'll program it in, and I'll make sure that everything's okay. But me being there at the theater probably won't happen because the next day I'm going to have to be up early anyway. So, yeah, it's a job, all right. It's a busy one.
Cool. That's cool, though. I did want to ask you a little bit, like I said, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because I think that's kind of fascinating that, you know, you've kind of, like my buddy Pete that is doing my new monthly segment there that did the Canon Films episode. Him and I have been talking for like the last year about getting a little projector and a screen and doing during the summer, like once a month, having backyard movie night, basically drive-in type things where we just invite a few friends over, pick a theme for the week. All right, this week we're going to watch The Howling and Dog Soldiers, or, you know, or whatever.
Ooh, nice stuff out there.
Or whatever we want to happen to watch, but watch like a couple of movies and just have it be like us. Nobody's paying any money or anything, but just kind of a fun thing to do with some of your buddies, you know, because, which got me, you know, thinking about like the whole theater thing and just how people pick content. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to, you know, talk with you a little bit about that. But so I'm looking forward to doing that this summer and doing some.
That's a great idea.
Like, you know, it's outdoors, so we'll have a little fire and stuff, and we'll be able to just kind of chill out and have a few beverages and like put the screen up outside and watch the movies and use the.
And what's cool about that is what you're suggesting there is actually not that expensive. Like getting an outdoor screen and like projectors, they're actually not that expensive.
I've been looking them up. You can buy a decent projector, not a high-end one because they do range up to $4,000 or $5,000 for some of the home projectors. But you can buy like 120 to 170 inch screen projector that will fit on that, you know, range for under $100, and you can get screens for, you know, they may not be great screens, but you can get them for I've seen anywhere between $20 and $40, $50. So for like around $150, you could have a pretty cool little setup to do that sort of thing. Yeah,
as long as you got some sound too. You got to work on sound too.
And the one that I have been looking at, actually, you can either Bluetooth it or you can do traditional sound hookup. So, or USB sound or HDMI, depending on what you're running into it. It has all the hookups. So, like I said, I have a little PA and a little PA head. I can just run it through that and have nice, you know, loud stereo sound, or do it that way, or a sound bar or anything you can kind of hook it up on. So we'll figure it out. It's cool. It's going to be interesting because I think it will be fun. You know, we're going to pick stuff that we like, you know, that are our favorite type films, and we may do like The Jaws and Godfather back to back or whatever we happen to want to do. Yeah. But whoops, just knocked over my phone. Too many wires.
And that's how our theater got started. Is a group of people just got together at the library, I believe, and just watched movies together, and you know, they picked out their own movies and like, let's just hang out at the library and watch a movie. And then from there, it kind of became a club, and that club grew into let's open up a theater. And so right down the street, they built this theater. And I mean, the dream is to have 2 screens so that we can get it changes everything. It opens up the flood doors of all sorts of different content and being a lot more risky with some of our selections to where, hey, people really liked that. And that's a gamble that I normally wouldn't take because we just have one screen. That on any given night with 2 screens, you can essentially have possibly 4 different movies playing, like on 2 different screens. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. Well,
it's like that was one of the things for a long time being into movies so much. I was like, man, my town never had a theater that while I was growing up or anything. There actually used to be an old theater in the middle of our town that had been shut down. It was like the old-fashioned, really like regal, freaking like almost ballroom-esque type theater with the big balcony and the big curtain and stuff. I was in it one time because they were doing like a 4-H auction or something in it, but I got to go in there and see it. I'd never been inside, the old tin ceilings and the wall. I was like, this is so cool. And me and my buddy got talking afterwards, and we were like, wouldn't it be cool if we could open this up, and just maybe like figure out a way with the town to like show movies on the weekends or something and pick different stuff out. We were like had all kinds of grand ideas, and they're actually at one time back in up until the late 70s, early 80s, there was actually a drive-in in our town, and it had like 2 screens. And then it shut down, so I never got to go because if I did, I'm pretty sure I never went to that. But I have friends that do remember going to that when they were like really little and stuff. And it was actually behind one of my friend's house in 15, 20 years ago. We went up there and all the speakers were still there, the frames for the screens, the old projection house. And again, being a movie nerd, it's like, oh, this would be so cool to like restore this and get this up and going again. It was, never happened. But recently, a couple years ago, Bangor, which is the one of the bigger cities in Maine, is like 45 minutes, like I said, south of me. They recently reopened their drive-in after like 30 years of it being closed, 35 years that it had been closed. They just have, in the last 2 or 3 years, have reopened the drive-in. And I've wanted to go 2 or 3 different times, and it's either rained or the person I was supposed to go with got sick. So I still haven't got to go yet. Because every year they usually pick, like, they had the 40th anniversary screening of Jaws on the big screen, and I so wanted to go see that.
Oh, that would have been cool.
And every year they do a Stephen King night because, Stephen King lives in Bangor. So they do a Stephen King night every fall, right before they get ready to shut the theater down. And they do it for like half price, so you can go in, costume contest, the whole deal. It's pretty cool. So
that's interesting. Yeah, I've only been to the drive-in a couple times in my life, and it's almost, well, at this point, not almost, it is a retro type thing to pull up in your car and watch it on a truly gigantic screen. I mean, those screens are big. I would love to see more. If there would be one in my town here, I'd go. I would love to take my boys to the drive-in, but unfortunately there is 1 or 2, I believe, somewhat, well, by relatively close, probably maybe an hour away, which, my time is limited, so an hour.
Well, that's like, that's like with me. We actually have, I think, 3 or 4 drive-in theaters still in Maine. They're all very spread out because Maine is a large state. So the ones in the southern part of the state, you're talking 3 hours to get to 2 to 3 hours. Bangor, like I said, is like 45 minutes to an hour. And actually where that is in Bangor, it's about an hour to get to. Maine, in the summertime, it doesn't get dark until like 8:30, 9 o'clock. So they don't even start showing films until late in the evening. So it makes it kind of difficult, especially like when you're on an early morning schedule and you get up really early to go to work. And, to go see a doubleheader of movies that's not going to be over till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then you've got an hour drive home. So, it's...
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Back in the day, I used to be able to do that no
And it's not
problem.
bad.
I
It's like
remember
$20 a carload to go for 2 films.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, it seems like forever ago that I was watching movies till 2 a.m. or whatever. Now it's like I actually did that.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Eugene, you did that many times. But my age and my kids have caught up with me, and I still love movies, but not at 2 a.m. anymore.
Now it's like you get those days. Even on my days off, I'm up by like 5:30, 6 o'clock most of the time. So it's like. But
yeah,
I don't
too.
think anything of getting up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning and throwing on like Near Dark or Friday the 13th or whatever, it's that's when I watch a lot of my movies on the weekend. Is I'll get up in the morning, I'll watch a movie before I go out for the day and do whatever I got to do, and then maybe I'll watch one in the evening.
Yeah.
Or Sundays lately, I kind of have gotten really into the VHS thing again. So, and I've probably got about 200 VHS now that I've...
Nice. Well, that's a great... Yeah, that's good.
Because out of my original VHS collection, I found, about the same time I watched Adjust Your Tracking, I actually found a box of my old purchased VHS movies. I thought I had sold all of them, but apparently I hadn't, and they were just in a box. And so there were still like 30 or 40 movies in that box. And... so that kind of got me on the kick because I had recently, a few years ago, I had bought a VCR DVD combo at a yard sale for like $2 because I needed something for my bedroom. So I had bought that and I was like, well, holy crap, I could actually watch some of these. And some of those movies I haven't seen since VHS days. So, like Tank Girl and some of that stuff like that. So I threw those, I threw some of those on, and then I watched the Adjust Your Tracking, and then it was like, man, just the whole nostalgia thing hit me. And there's a few places around here that I can find VHS pretty regularly. Maybe not the stuff that I'm really looking for, but, I can always find stuff. So what I've been doing, it's stuff that I either A, wouldn't spend more than $1 on because, it's really cheesy type stuff, or it's, films that I don't need to watch on DVD or Blu-ray. They're perfectly fine for what the format they're on, and I can pick them up for $0.25 to $1, 50 cents to $1. So that's kind of been my mentality when picking stuff up. There's a lot of like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and just random cheesy action and comedy from, that era. And it's like, I'm not spending more than $0.25 on this because I'll probably watch it once or twice here and there, but
Yeah. I go through spurts though. Like I was recently on a on a war/Vietnam type kick, so I watched a bunch of those. What? And now I'm going to be on a Kurosawa kick, so I'm going to watch some of Kurosawa's more prominent movies, and it just depends on what my mood is. Oh
yeah, no, and I think for a lot of us that are, really into film and cinema, I do the same thing. Like I watch horror all year long, but I go really bonkers around September and October every year, where that's like all I watch for like a couple months. So usually for 2 or 3 months after, my horror movie viewing is a little more sporadic because I'm watching a shitload of like sci-fi and action films. But I'm like, okay, I'm into March now. I've started pulling out a few more horror movies again now because it's time to watch some of that stuff again, especially like old favorite stuff that I watch almost every year. So yeah, I totally understand that.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Yeah. There's even times where I'm like, I've been keeping notes since 2007 of every single movie that I watch. I actually put down the date that I watch it, the title, and what format, a star rating 1 to 5, and then usually like 2 sentences of what I thought of the movie. And I've been doing that since 2007. And so I can, on my MacBook, I can actually pull up and I can just do like a search for a movie title, like Exorcist. And I can see like for the past, well, now almost 11 years, like, oh, I've watched that movie 10 times, and here's our whatever, and I can flip through all of my reviews, and so sometimes if I really like a movie, I'll do that, and I'm like, oh, I watched that less than a year ago. I have to just wait at least a year until I watch that movie again. But that is my reference to a lot of times, like, what am I going to, especially if it's a movie that I've seen before, I'll just like, well, when was the last time I watched, Missing in Action? Oh, well, there it was 3 years ago. Okay, I watched it then.
Because I did that for the Canon episode. I found a Blu-ray copy of it, actually, for like $6, I think, or $7, something.
About what I paid for it.
So I bought a copy because that is one of my films for my top 5 on my Canon episode, and I have not seen that movie. That was the other movie that was on Red Dawn, and Lone Wolf McQuade was Missing in Action. So I haven't seen that
Chuck
movie
Norris.
since that tape broke back in the mid-90s. So yeah.
Yep.
So that was like my...
Oh, I've grown up with those movies. Yeah. So anyway, that's... so often I'll especially if I've had a rough day at work or with the kids or whatever, then it's like, okay, now which usually I go to either really raunchy comedy or more than likely horror. Then I'm like, okay, I have to watch, which is one of the reasons I watched The Exorcist not long ago again. I'm like, I had a particularly bad day, and I'm like, which is odd that I'm like, oh, The Exorcist is what I should be watching, but it all comes down to just what you like and what getting an emotional reaction out of me. And sometimes I'm like, I need to get an emotional reaction out of myself and get out of this funk. And so usually a really, really good horror movie will
it's weird because, you're a metalhead too. So I've learned that from watching listening to your show. I'm a metalhead, and metal in like horror movies, when I'm in a pissy mood, that's usually my go-tos. When I'm in a really crappy mood, is I want to listen to Cannibal Corpse or
dude, Cannibal Corpse is like that's my groove right now.
When I'm
Cannibal
pissed
Corpse.
off and I'm in a bad mood, I throw on like The Bleeding or friggin' Tomb of the Mutilated or Eaten Alive or whatever, Eaten Back to Life, whatever.
Yep.
So I'll throw on that stuff, and it's weird because I really like Cannibal Corpse, but that seems like that's the only time I ever really listen to them that much is when I'm in a bad mood. So, but same and the same with horror. But I have those films too. Like I have started spacing my annual viewings of Red Dawn out to like every other year because I have seen that film. The only other film I probably have seen as much as Red Dawn is Jaws. I've seen Jaws more than probably any other film because that is my favorite movie of all time, and I adore that movie. But even Jaws, I only watch maybe every 2 or 3 years now because it's just gotten to the point I've watched it so much that it's too easy to kind of throw it on and not really pay attention. I want to pay attention to it, when I watch it. So,
yeah. Oh, I got you. I have those movies too, and that's
Army of Darkness is another one that I love when I'm in a crappy mood that I like to throw on because it always cheers me up.
Yeah, that's a great one for a cheer up because that's both horror, action, and comedy blended perfectly together.
The three things I pretty much love. So. Yeah, it's a great combination of things, but it's weird that I think I think a lot of people, whether they even realize it or not, probably has those go-tos that they don't even realize that, man, I'm in a shitty mood, so I'm going to watch Pulp Fiction today. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. That's depending on my mood will a lot of the times dictate what I watch in the evening. And of course, usually it's horror, but there is still, times that I'm like, well, I'm in a very, I'm in a much more serious mood and I want more of an epic, big blockbustery type movie.
What's funny though? It's with me. It's most of the time it's either horror or like Pixar movies. Like I'll throw on The Incredibles or Toy Story or freaking Monsters Inc. or whatever, or something like that. Something animated that's just easy to digest and I can kind of. So yeah. So it's kind of a weird extreme thing, one way or the other. It's like, all right, I'm either watching The Gates of Hell or I'm watching Toy Story.
Yeah.
So, very similar films.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. It just depends on my mood. And of course, with my kids, it's like if my kids are into, like right now they're into Pokemon, so we're watching tons of Pokemon cartoons. And I'm looking forward to, as they get older, to introduce them to more and more movies that we can all appreciate and like instead of just the cartoon stuff. Although I like cartoons and Pixar is great. But I'm looking forward to introducing them to some of my favorites. Obviously, the horror stuff is going to be a little while.
Yeah, and that's something, like, it's weird. Like, I know you listen to the Movie Crip with Adam Green and Joe Lange, and they were just talking about that not too long ago. I can't remember the episode, but somebody was asking about, like, what's the right age to start showing your kids, some of these movies. I really think it depends on the maturity level of the kid, because I'm not saying we were any better or whatever, but back in our day, I think we were a lot more mature at like 12 or 13 than a 12 or 13-year-old is now. As far as, like, you know, I had a job when I was 12. I started working, so, and I had a lot of responsibility as a kid, so I think I was able to handle and digest that stuff a bit more, maybe more so than a kid now. I guess it really all depends on the kid, like I said, but where little Johnny might be able to watch it, Susie maybe isn't quite ready for, the beyond.
Yeah. We'll wait for another year or two, maybe.
Dickie is going to scar her for life if she watches it. So, that scarred me when I watched it because I didn't see it coming. But, I think you know what scene I'm talking about, too. So, yeah. That's just hard to watch. It's like, really? You just killed the blind lady very viciously.
Headshot, boom, done. Yes,
Dickie,
the dog.
Dickie,
the dog ripping the neck out.
Petting the dog. Yeah.
Later on, the redhead girl gets the face blast with the gun. That's like the most iconic scene in that movie for me.
I don't even find that one as disturbing as there's scenes in Gates of Hell. There's some scenes in that it's just like, how did they get away with showing that on screen at all? Because that's just messed up. So yeah. I love it. Well, anyway, hey, I gotta get going here. My wife texted me saying that I just was looking. I was like,
kids,
we'll definitely have to do it again, man, because it's very easy to
this is great.
Easy to kill an hour.
Oh yeah, I could easily talk hours and hours with you and Eric about movies and
the Eugene episode that we'll have to break into like 5 parts or something. All right, man.
Different horror genres, subgenres.
Thanks a lot for coming on. And real quick, I just want to say, make sure you guys check out The Movie Freaks with Eric and Eugene. Awesome podcast. If you like movies, comedy, and just two old friends that are shooting the shit about movies, you will love this show, because I think most of us have that one friend that we can just, shoot the shit with movies about. And they decide to do a show about it, and it's amazing. So, and there's like 190 episodes or whatever to backlog and go through and check out. So, which I do a lot of times. I'm like, all right, I got nothing to listen to. I'm going to go find episode 100 from whatever and throw it on. And,
nice.
But again, I want to thank my sponsors real quick. The Maine Cannababes. Go to maincannababes.com. They have all kinds of cool stuff up on there. They're working on the 2019 calendar. I'm not sure who the beneficiary is going to be for that yet. There's just lots of cool things that they do. Check out Average Joe's Drive-In on Facebook at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast, Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr., the Twitter at TWJ Author, or you can go to thomaswashburnjr.com. Also, if you want to support the show, go to Amazon.com, type in Thomas Washburn Jr. My books are available for sale in both paper and Kindle format. All the proceeds that I make off those, I'm dumping back into the show to improve things, because these cost money. I love doing them, and I'm going to do them regardless, but I'd like to improve some things. So if you want to help the show, that's a great way. And if you have Kindle Unlimited or Prime, you can read the books for free, and I still get paid. And again, Eugene, Thank you for being on. And I'm going to leave the show with some words of advice. Remember, kids, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.
It's intermission. Rise and stretch time. Time to refresh yourself and visit our snack bar. Got a yen for hot popcorn? Your favorite soft drinks are sparkling cold. The juicy Frank sizzling hot. There's delicious coffee, freshly brewed, and all kinds of ice cream and candy to tempt you. Showtime will be announced loud and clear to get you back to your car in time. So stretch your legs. Come to the snack bar now.